Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sara Newman, and I'm so happy you're joining me for this episode of Saturday with Sara. Today we're playing with the Lady Vagabond Lifestyle Collection from our friends at Stamperia. Now, many of you are familiar with Lady Vagabond and Sir Vagabond from previous webisodes, and if so, you'll be really pleased to see there are new additions to this range. Now, if you're new to this collection, you are in for a real treat. Okay, let's take a closer look. I'm going to move aside the die cuts and rice paper and this really cool gray board clock. We'll take a closer look at that in a second, but we can begin with our 12 by 12 paper pack. Now here you can see you've got 10 sheets of double-sided pattern papers. These are all maxi backgrounds, which means that you've got a beautiful assortment of background designs. You can see snippets of them here. I'll just open this up and you can see lots of really beautiful vintage designs. You've got a lot of faux rust texture on here. There's also some kind of wallpaper style as well as script, sheet music, lots of book imagery, as well as type and maps, of course, all going with this very fun vagabond theme. So to go along with the background papers, of course, there are also die cuts. Now the package has 41 chipboard die cuts in it, and I think it's a little easier to see them when they're this way. Here's Lady Vagabond. You've also got lots of frames. You've got some old-fashioned imagery on here. Everything is a nice, sturdy chipboard weight, so really easy to use. Lots of fun elements in here to play with. Now, of course, because it is Stamperia, we also have rice papers. I'm going to tilt these ones on the side so you can see them a little bit more easily. This is the metal plates design. Now, you could use this in its entirety. You can also use just elements of it. So lots of fun with this one. And rice paper, as we'll see, is a really nice texture to add to your projects. This one is called Rust Effect, and again, you've got some really nice variation on this sheet. And then our third, I'll turn it back around this way, this is called Four Cards, and you can see why. So these make really nice card focals. You can, of course, also use them for the inside of your card. Now, the last item that I want to show you here is the gray board clock set. And this contains all kinds of cogs and gears and words and a basis for you to create your own vintage inspired clock decoration. So this is the one that I made, and I'll be showing you how I put this together in today's webisode. As you can see, you can add your own paints. You can add some of the opal polish, lots of really fun finishes that you can add on here to create your own customized clock decoration. As you can see, we have a lot to explore today, and I'm really glad you're here. Come play with us. Let's start with a simple card that combines these gorgeous papers and die cuts. So here I've created a folded card front and decorated all of the panels with pattern papers. Now this gives me lots of room for using the die cuts, and it also gives me room for adding in some of the dazzles. These are from the We're Together Dazzles collection. So it's a lot of fun to do some mixing and matching here. Now it's a super simple card layout to do, so let me show you this. I'll start with my blank white card. Now these are from hot off the press and they come pre-scored in the middle. So all I need to do is just fold this up and I'm ready to go. Then what I can do is take just this front flap and simply fold it back to meet the fold that goes along the edge of the card. Okay, so I'm going to fold this with my hand, and then what I like to do is come in with a bone folder and just do a little extra scoring. This just makes it nice and crisp and lie flat so that when I'm adding my paper and my embellishments on here, I know that it's a nice crisp fold. And then I've got my folded card front. So quick and easy to do. And it's a nice way to create something that's a little bit different. Okay, so let me show you the second step that I have in this process. So here I've got my folded card, and you can see I've already glued in some of that patterned paper. And so now what I can do is start decorating. And with this, I've added some edging around all of that pattern paper. You can see this along here. Well, this is Dylusions paint, and I'm using desert sand. So I'm going to grab my desert sand. Of course, I'm working on my craft mat. I'm also going to grab a little tiny piece of cut and dry. Cut and dry normally comes on a much larger sheet, and then you can just snip it apart to create these little pieces. And this is my applicator. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of my paint and just deposit that onto my craft mat. You don't need a whole lot. And then you'll notice here with the cut and dry, you've got kind of a hard sponge and then a soft sponge. So I'm applying the paint onto the soft sponge half. And that means that I can just go along the edges, almost like edging with an ink pad, and come along here. Again, if I want to add more coverage, I just need to angle my foam applicator more toward the front of the paper. And then you can see I'm able to get that really nice edge on there. Let me show you with my up against the white. You can see that a little bit better. So you can go as heavy or as light as you want on the application of that. But it's a quick and easy way to get some really nice shading and shadowing on your card. And that's what I've done here. So let me bring this back in again and we can take another look. I've covered all of those panels with pattern paper. So this is a different piece than this one. So you can see here I've covered up that seam there with some of that paint edging. And then on the front as well, I've got quite a lot of it going along here. Now this is going to give me lots of area for my die cuts. So you can see a sentiment here. This one is up on foam tape. These are two separate elements. So I've got this little cat just sitting on top of a pile of books like it is at my house. And then here's Lady Vagabond, and she's got some of her her portrait gallery on here, including that little kitty cat as well. Now this one here is holding a dazzle, and so that this can kind of read throughout the layout of the card here. So a lot of fun to decorate this, and of course you've also got kind of a hidden panel here so that you can add another message or even more of those die cuts. Quick and easy to do and a lot of fun. Now here's another card project that also combines the die cuts and paper, plus some rice paper that you can see on here. So let me gather a few supplies and we'll take a look at this technique. Here I have a couple of layers going on my card front. So first I've got my pattern paper on the card base. Then I've got the Rust Effect rice paper on white cardstock with one of the images from the 4 cards rice paper layered on top. So you can see here there's that beautiful rust effect, and then here is this really cool vintage typewriter that I'm also using. So not only can you layer rice paper onto pattern paper or onto plain cardstock, you can also layer it on top of itself. So let's take a look at that process. I'll move aside my card. Again, these are the 2 sheets that we will be working with. Now I want to show you with this rust effect paper, which is so beautiful. I've got this up on some white cardstock here, but I want you to be able to see that this is a lovely weight of translucent, almost like a mulberry paper. If I flip it over, you can see some of the fibers in here. So what you'll want to do is tear or cut a piece of this to size. So I've got a smaller piece of white cardstock here, and this is what I will be gluing this onto. So a couple of tools that I want to have on hand. First of all, a wet paintbrush or a water brush will do the trick. I've got this one already dipped in some water. So what I'm going to do is just kind of paint along the center here, or along this line. Got a cup of water over here. And this is going to soften those fibers. You think you can see it getting darker. And then I can tear this really easily. So that will just separate like so. And then what I can do is tear along the other edge if I want to as well. I'm going to leave that straight for now, and then we can get on to the gluing process. So I've got this a little bit smaller than my piece of cardstock. Now, what to glue this with? Well, Lots of different options, although my favorite is the Cosmic Acrylic Glue. So a white craft glue is what you need to have. And again, I'm going to be using my craft mat here as my palette, and I'll just squeeze out some of this glue. Now, it helps to make this a little bit more watery. So a little bit of water mixed in here. And then I'm going to use a paintbrush to mix in that diluted glue. Okay, so then what I want to do is apply my watery medium onto my card surface. Now, if you're working with smaller pieces of rice paper, you can put your glue on the rice paper. But I find that when I'm working with larger pieces, if I try to do that, then I end up with something that's gluey and floppy, and it generally tends to stick to itself. So this is a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to place this down, start from the center and kind of smooth out a little bit, like so, and then make sure that's all secure. Now, if I have torn edges, I especially like to come back and just add a little bit of glue along those edges just to make sure everything is secured down. Okay, like so. And then all I need to do is let this dry, and I can add on a second layer if I want to. Now, you can add your second layer while it's still a little bit damp if you want to, but I found that it worked a lot better if things were dry first. It just made it a little bit less sticky to handle. So I've got a piece here that is already dry. Now you'll notice it's curved up a little bit. Normally I'll put this underneath something heavy like the plates in my die cutting machine or a stack of books to smooth that down, but we'll be able to work with this no problem. And I have another image from that 4-card set, and I thought we'd try this and see how that looks. So I've got a different section of the rust effect paper and a different rice paper focal, but let's take a look and see how this goes. Now, this one is a little bit smaller, maybe a bit easier to handle, so I'm going to flip this over and add my watery glue on here. And just get a nice even coating. I'm not too worried about the edges at this point, because when I put this onto my main piece, I can add on a little bit of glue there. Okay, so I'll just smooth this down. Again, work from the center. You don't have to worry too much about air bubbles like you do with traditional decoupage because of the weight of the rice paper. It tends to make it a little bit less prone to warping and buckling. And then I'll just come in with my brush, again, a little bit more of that medium, and tack down all of the sides and edges. So you don't need a whole lot of glue. Just a little bit will do the trick. And I think I've got this almost all glued down. And then same process as before. Let this dry and you are ready to use your piece on your card. Don't forget to put your brush into some water though, of course, otherwise you can find those bristles glued to themselves. So do keep that in mind. Clean up your craft mat and you are ready to work on your card. So I'll bring this back in again and we can take another look. I've trimmed that all down once it was all dry, and then I went around the outside edge also with my cut and dry and also using some Dilutions paint. And this one is the Balmy Night. So again, same process as before, just grab a piece of cut and dry and go around those edges, and then you can glue it onto the front of your card. Now I've also got some more chipboard elements on here. I've got a script dazzle going across the front. That big beautiful focal element on there, I just love that. Then for the card inside, I have another piece of this gorgeous pattern paper. This is also edged with paint, plus a circle of paper that I die cut using the circle and scalloped cutting dies from hot off the press. And I just trimmed off some of the excess there. Now I've also snipped apart a script dazzle so that it can be placed going along the curve of the circle. So speaking of circles, I've also used those same dies to create a focal area for this collage of die cuts. So I've die cut the circle and scallop from pattern papers, edging them both with paint. And here I'm using the Balmy Night plus a combination of desert sand. Got a little bit of that. And then I've also worked in a little bit of blue Hawaiian. And that's going to give me, especially around these edges, a little bit of a verdigris look. Okay, there's a bit of striped paper behind the frame die cut and a dazzle from the We're Together dazzle set. Now on the card inside, I have more of this beautiful pattern paper. I'm hard pressed to say, but I think this one might be my favorite in the collection. I have a border strip that I've cut from one of the sheets, plus one of the images from the 4 cards rice paper, die cut into a circle. So there's that little kitty cat. It's a square, it's a rectangle shape, of course, but once you've adhered that to cardstock, let that dry really thoroughly, then you can die cut it as well. Just do be sure to let that glue dry really, really well. Okay, we've seen some fun card designs we can create with the rice paper, but what about that clock I showed you at the beginning of the webisode? Well, this is such a fun and easy project to do, and we can use our same painting techniques to make it totally personalized. Let's take a look. All the pieces you need to create your clock are inside this pack, and you can follow this design here for assembling it, or you can do your own thing. And I did a bit of both with my clock. I wanted to decorate the front and then also the back, and you have got plenty inside this pack to do both, plus a few items that you'll have left over that you can use for other crafting projects. Okay, so all you need to do is pop the pieces out from the gray board and then decorate them with paint. You can use opal polish, ink, really whatever you like. I used a combination of the Ranger Dilutions paint plus a bit of red pearl opal polish. And then for the center of my clock, I wanted to have some of that pattern paper included on there, so I used a scalloped circle die. Okay, let's take a look at how this process comes together. So I'll move aside my package here, and you can see where I've already popped out some of these elements here. So you've got the base of your clock, and that would be right here. And then down here at the bottom is where you will have a nice big open circle. I use this on the back of my clock as well as the clock face. So I'm going to start with my base here, again working onto my craft mat, and for this I was using the Balmy Night. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of this here on my craft mat, grab a piece of cut and dry, and then just dip this in here. Now I really like using this process for painting the gray board because unlike a brush, the cut and dry applies just the perfect amount of coverage. So it's not too much paint. It'll dry quickly and you get some nice even coverage. And you can see here how beautifully this gray board accepts the paint. It really is a pleasure to work with. Now with this paint, it does have a nice opacity to it, so you don't need to do multiple coats. I did one coat and had plenty of coverage. I kind of hold on to this in the center here. Now because I know I want to cover the center of my clock, I don't have to worry too much about doing any painting on the inside there. So that's all I really need to do for my clock base, and then I can add my various elements on top. Now, as I mentioned, I wanted to incorporate pattern paper in here. So I've got two circle, I've got a scallop and a smooth circle. One will go right on top of the other and then go right on top of my clock. But I wanted, of course, to alter these a little bit too. So I'm going to move aside my clock here. And let's look at this beautiful reddish paper. Now I wanted to add some iridescence to this. And this is where the red pearl opal polish will come in. So you guys know that I love my opal polishes. And this is from Creative Expressions. You've got the little applicator here and this beautiful jar of medium. So I'm going to scrape off the excess from the sponge applicator and then just gently apply some of this medium to my pattern paper. Now you'll notice here, when I move my applicator, you can see the difference between where I've got that really pretty iridescent polish on here and the regular pattern paper. It's just going to add some really nice, pretty shine on here. Perfect for Lady Vagabond. I think she would approve. And this will dry quite quickly as well, too, so that's also nice. Okay, so just go along the edges here. If I need to pick up a bit more, I can definitely do that. Okay. So then I just need to let that dry. Be sure and put the lid back on here. And then I can add this to my scalloped piece. Now, I did want to add a little bit of texture around the edges here. So I'm going to lighten my blue with a little bit of Desert Night. And then I'm going to pick up that same piece of cut and dry. It's okay if it's a little bit dirty, that's fine. And just make a bit of a third color here. So I'm just lightening up that blue so that I can come along here and just give a little bit of edging. Now, it does take a bit of patience to go around those scallops, but the end result, I think, is worth it. It gives you some nice dimension and a little bit of weathering and aging going around the outside edge. And of course, by cutting a piece of cut and dry, you can really get into the innies of that scallop. Okay, so going around the outside edge there, and then once I get that all done, I can pop my red piece on top, and then I can put both of them onto my card base now, or my clock base rather. Now I've got another element that I want to add on top, which is the clock face itself with the Roman numerals. Now for my original clock, I wanted to have this, of course, stand out a little bit from the backing. And so I've done this again using some of that beautiful dark blue. And then I sponged on a little bit of the red pearl opal polish. So let's take a look at that. You'll notice that I've popped out some of the elements in here, but not all of them from the Roman numerals. And the reason for that is because there's some really fine detail in here. And sometimes it's easier to remove those little pieces after they've been painted rather than risk getting your paint kind of glommed into the center area. Okay, so just picking up some of that paint, again from my little piece of cut and dry. I will use this little piece a lot, so it goes, a little piece of cut and dry goes a long way. Okay, so here we go along the outside edges here, and then let this dry before you add on your opal polish. You don't want to contaminate the sponge, so you do want to make sure that this is fairly dry before you move on. And because I was using such a light touch, it's pretty much dry. So then what I can do, once again, come back in with my handy sponge, scrape off the excess. You don't want too much on there. And then just add very, very light touch. Kind of a swooping motion, and you can see how pretty that looks. It gives it a little bit of iridescence, a little bit of variegated background. It's so easy to do. And then, of course, do as much as you want and let that dry. Okay, now I'm going to bring back in my clock. We can take another look at this, and you can see here how I've layered everything up. I've also got some of these innie pieces here. Now, again, I would suggest keeping all of these into the main piece of the gray board while you're painting. Just makes it a little bit easier. You'll have kind of something to hold on to that as well. Some of these little cogs and gears, though, you can create sort of a verdigris effect. And for that, I add in a little bit of the Blue Lagoon, or Blue Hawaiian, as I've been known to call this. There's something about this color that I can never remember the name of it, even though I use it quite a lot. So I'm going to pick up a bit of this and kind of pounce this in here. Layer that up a little bit too, and that's going to give you just a really pretty, almost like a weathered look. A little bit of that teal on there. And then again, let that dry and you can pop out those various pieces there. Okay, now as for assembling everything, you can use that Cosmic Shimmer acrylic glue. I also used sticky specks, especially for that background paper on there. I found that that just created a really smooth application process and it holds it down really nicely. Of course, you've also got your hands of your clock on here, and then you've got some words if you want to add them on there as well. Then there's the top of the clock here too, and then a little accent piece here. So you've got some nice dimension on there as well. Now for the other side of my clock, I've added more of those little gears and then some more of the words on here. I've got another circle of that pattern paper. Again, I've added some of the opal polish on there. And then you can see where I've used this frame for the clock. That's going to go right on top as well. Okay, I'm going to kind of clean this up a little bit because I want to show you something else. You'll have a lot of pieces left over from your clock set, depending. I mean, I didn't use all of them, but you can also put those to use for a card project. And you can see here that I've added some of those beautiful verdigris pieces here on my card face. I've also got some of the rice paper here in the center, trimmed down and mounted up onto the front of my card. And that's the metal plates, rice paper. And I've just adhered it onto white cardstock, trimmed it with a paper trimmer, and edged it with Balmy Night. I've got another collection of die cuts on here, and this time it creates kind of an interior scene with a framed portrait and then also a We're Together dazzle in another frame. On the card inside, I have a large die cut plus a sentiment and just a touch of ribbon. So that is our last project for today. I hope you found the Lady Vagabond collection just as inspiring as I did. Thank you to our friends at Stamperia, and a big thank you to you for joining me today. We're really glad that you're here, and we're so happy that you're a part of the Paper Wishes family. Do feel free to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. Be sure to see the money saver on the right side of your screen at paperwishes.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, just have a look in the description box below this video. You'll find a link that will take you to our Paper Wishes webisodes page, and you can see everything I just mentioned. If you enjoyed our video today, we'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It helps people to find our channel. And don't forget to subscribe. We create 3 to 5 videos each week, so there's always something fun to inspire your creative spirit.